Welcome, one and all, to Spice Camp 2016 safety training. Normally, when we do this training in person, we actually handle chemicals and set things on fire, so it's super fun. You just get the video version. But if you come in to work on activities and stuff with Spice Campers, if you come in to do activity preparation with your leaders, we can set some things on fire. That's always fun. So the purpose of this training is to prevent accidents, gain awareness of potential hazards in science outreach, identify safe practices, and learn how to model safe behavior. So you are volunteering for Spice Camp. You may be in a behind-the-scenes capacity, delivering supplies and whatnot, but it's always good to know safety, especially when we're working with kids. I'm going to skip this whole thing here. It's really cool, but it takes me like 30 minutes to go through. Suffice it to say, the best way to be safe is to practice the activities you're participating in. Practice, practice, practice. So if you do get signed up to work particular activities with your lead instructors, do the best you can to actually get in on the testing phase for that, or make sure that they have familiarized yourself with the potential safety hazards of the activity. Most of our activities are, pretty simple stuff, but there are always some safety concerns. So, planning for an activity. So make sure that you know your activity really well, that you understand what you're doing before you go in, and that you know the areas for potential safety concerns. Always consider ways that you can communicate safe actions clearly to the people that you're working with, in this case kids. So really emphasize the safety elements when you're explaining stuff to them. And as I mentioned before, practice, practice, practice. Always be prepared. It's never fun to come into helping out with science activity and have no idea what you're doing. It doesn't work very well. So hopefully you've either done these things before, or you'll get together with your instructors, to make sure that you're really up to speed on what's going on. That's blank white. Review any supplies that you're going to be using in the activity. What equipment and materials you're using are potentially hazardous. What are those hazards? What safety gear is necessary for you, and if you're giving a demonstration, your audience, and what other equipment might you need, like for cleaning up if there's a spill. So it's always good to have trash bags and brooms and gloves and things like that if you have anything that might need to be cleaned up. So make sure to think about those things ahead of time. Now, it's your lead instructor's responsibility to, make sure all of this is in place, but you should still know what you're doing and what is needed. You don't necessarily have to be the one to put together the supply list unless you volunteer to lead an activity, but you should have an idea of what's going on and how you'll handle any safety issues that come up. And in case I didn't mention it before, practice, practice, practice. This is a presentation I give a lot for people who are giving public demos. That's a video where Bunsen from the Muppet sets Beaker on fire, but the sound doesn't come through when I do these screen recordings, so I'll skip it. It's really funny. Some typical kinds of supplies we often use at Spice Camp involve household chemicals, microscopes, and other small lab equipment, glassware, and sharp tools. That's mostly where our injuries have come from in Spice Camp, is people getting cut, although really one cut actually came from an activity. Every other cut has been people walking around without shoes on. So make sure your campers wear their shoes. We also use batteries and electronics, sometimes thermometers, although they're usually safety thermometers, plants, and small invertebrates. Not a big deal, but, important to say things like, hey, we don't put plants in our mouths when we're doing science. We don't put anything in our mouths when we're doing science, unless it's a taste activity, and then actually we do a lot of putting stuff in our mouths in the appropriate setting. So that's that stuff. This is a lab safety video I'm not going to go into. Hopefully you've all had chemistry and you know the basics of lab safety. You should all know that, but maybe you haven't. We're not going to do anything seriously labby-like, though. Don't leave open flames running. Don't leave chemicals in places they can easily spill. Wear the appropriate safety gear and covered shoes and all that good stuff. If you do happen to break some glass, the disposal procedure is shockingly simple. Gather it all up safely without cutting yourself. Put it in a box. Seal the box up so that none of the glass can leak out of the sides. Packing tape works really great for that. Seal it up and then write on it glass on all the sides and throw it in the trash. And that's just so the custodial staff know that there's glass in there and they don't get cut opening it up. Pretty simple. Chemicals, if you're working with any chemicals that you're unfamiliar with, make sure to check the material safety data sheets. Find out the products of any reactions that you're doing, but again, in Spice Camp, we don't tend to do a whole lot. I mean, there are a few units where we do chemical reactions. Fortunately, those are all being led by chemists this year. Make sure that you talk with them about what the products are and what the potential concerns are for disposing any chemical reactions. But mostly we do baking soda and vinegar type stuff, really safe. And make sure that, if you're being asked to clean up after an activity, that you know the proper disposal of chemicals. Morgan, our supply person, will actually handle the labeling and tagging and disposing of any chemicals that require special disposal, and she'll have all the equipment provided for that. But it's a good idea to know if you're doing an activity, just that there is some special disposal. Wash your hands at all appropriate times, like after handling plants or invertebrate animals or chemicals. And listen to your lead instructor when they give instructions. Really important. And model to the campers listening during instructions. As volunteers, often you'll be sort of standing at the back of the room while the teachers are giving instructions. And if you notice students not paying attention, make sure to get their attention and say, hey, you need to pay attention to this, or you're not going to get to do the activity. And you need to be able to tell us what the directions were before you get your supplies. And everyone has a veto for safety in Spice Camp. I mentioned this in the volunteer training video, and I'm mentioning it again. Campers, instructors, volunteers, bystanders, everybody can walk up and say, like, hey, I think this activity has gone to a not safe place, and the instructors will immediately halt the activity in the safest fashion possible, go over the potential safety concerns, and then if it seems like they can be addressed, proceed with the activity. If not, then stop the activity. Don't do stupid things. That's another video I like to show, but, don't blow things up and not have safety glasses on or things like that. Make sure to follow the procedures for what you're doing. Not going to worry about transportation. Suffice it to say, if you're transporting chemicals or cryogenic substances on behalf of the University of Oregon, your private auto insurance will still be dinged first if you destroy something in an accident with those. So always be careful when transporting those things, especially for work purposes. We do have insurance with the university if you've registered your trip through the University of Oregon that will cover anything your private insurance doesn't cover. But your private insurance can decide to cancel your policy. It's crazy. I mean, you could spill like Windex, but if you were transporting it for the University of Oregon, they can theoretically cancel your policy because you were transporting chemicals for a work purpose. Not really relevant for volunteers at Spice Camp. You don't usually find yourself transporting things. But if you're curious about this, I can tell you lots more. For any activities with safety concerns, such as handling fire or chemicals or things like that, we should have an active safety plan in place. And we actually just crib those from the various departments, and your lead instructors will be responsible for that, so don't worry too much. Okay, although some of you listening here are lead instructors, and you'd be like, Brandy, what is all this stuff you're glossing over that we need to do? I can talk with you guys about that, but Matt and Morgan in particular know all this stuff really well because they're chemists. In general, when thinking about safety, consider your audience. What are their capabilities? If you need the participants of the activity to be able to do certain things in case of an accident, consider, can they do that given their age, in particular with camp? Is this something you can trust middle schoolers to do, or do we need to modify the plan in the case of some sort of accident or something? Can children be trusted to do X, Y, and Z? And generally speaking, yes, the Spice Campers can be trusted as long as they've been informed and had the message driven home. Consider age. Little kids don't have the best impulse control. Middle schoolers don't always have the best impulse control, but if you keep harping at them, like at intervals, like, hey, we need to behave responsibly, and that looks like, using our safety equipment, responding appropriately, not diving into stuff that we don't know our instructions for, that sort of thing will help a lot. Consider the type of activity. Always consider what the potential safety hazards are, or really in science camp, it's less the safety hazards. I mean, safety is very important, but more like the mess and the fallout if the campers don't follow the instructions the way you intended them to. What are the annoying side effects that we might have for this? Obviously, safety is the first thing we consider, but beyond that, you might want to also consider what the kids are doing here in this picture is Mentos and Coke, which is super fun, but they are not using Diet Coke, and as soon as one of those kids puts a Mento in, the others are going to try to put the Mento in, but it's going to start making a geyser of sticky soda everywhere, and they're going to get it all over them. And soda has sugar in it, and sugar water is super sticky and hard to clean up. So it's best to use diet soda when doing Mentos and Coke. Little things like that can make your life a lot easier at Spice Camp. Consider the size of the audience. Small groups you can give instructions to and you can easily communicate with and corral. Large groups, it's really harder to do, so the larger your audience, the less participatory it's going to be, the more they're going to be passively watching stuff. and we are heavily in favor of participating. Consider the limitations of the space you're in. If it's a very small, tight space and the activity requires a lot of elbow room, then maybe you should move it somewhere else. Are children going to be easily able to get up and handle spills and things like that in the space that you're in? So take that into consideration. A lot of times we, put things that are potentially messy inside of another vessel on the table. That way if it spills, it doesn't get all over the tables and the floors and the kids. Just simple little things like that can make things go a lot more nicely. Erect barriers if you need to. In Discovery Camp in particular, there will be some really cool demonstrations, and our campers, they should be able to handle themselves and stay in place. But if there are potential dangers of the demo that you're doing, make sure that there's something physically between them and the activity. Tables work really well. We usually do tables on demos and keep the demo at the back of the table, so even if they rush forward, we can whisk it out of their way quite quickly. We don't usually have this problem with Spice Campers, though. They know they need to stay where they are. Make sure to provide clear instructions. So, one thing we mentioned in the training video, people can only hold a few things in their heads at a time. So only give a few instructions at a time when you're doing an activity. If you can break it up into small chunks of no more than 3 instructions at a time, this is a huge help. Because if you give people 10 instructions, they're going to get lost. They're going to miss things and they're going to get confused. So try to break activities up into small, easy to digest instructions. Make sure to repeat yourself a lot, because even a kid that's paying attention momentarily spaces out. I mean, we've all done this in class, like an instructor's talking about something we're actually really interested in, but something blipped on our phone and we looked at our text message for a second, then we realized, oh gosh, I just missed the last 30 seconds of whatever they said, and everybody laughed, and it was probably important. And then you're the embarrassed person who has to either hope you figure it out or raise your hand and ask them to repeat themselves. But this is summer camp, so how about we just proactively get in front of that and repeat ourselves? Because kids are sitting next to one another, they're elbowing one another, they're tittering, they're having fun. They're going to miss stuff, even when they're really highly engaged. So just make sure to say stuff over again, have them repeat it back to you. And what did I just say? What are the 3 things we're going to do? Break complex tasks into smaller chunks so that your instructions are smaller, as I mentioned before. Ask the audience to repeat instructions back to you when they're important. Provide written instructions and diagrams where appropriate. So maybe you're giving them instructions, but you also have some thrown up on the board, like here's step 1, here's step 2, that they can refer to as they're carrying out the activity. Do not, please, if you value your sanity, do not give them the supplies until it's time to use them, and until you have given them the instructions and they have repeated the instructions, even if it's just a part of the instructions, back to you, and you know that they know what they're supposed to be doing with the supplies. If you leave the supplies on the table before they're ready to use them and before they have their instructions, you will lose them because they will be fidgeting with those supplies, even up to, and I'm not kidding you, pencils. Having pencils on the table when they come into the room, they will start playing with them and be like, what are we going to do with the pencils? What's up with the pencils? Now, if they have a pencil in their bag, that's fine. But if you put pencils on the table, they're immediately wanting to know, what am I going to do with this pencil? And you will lose their focus, because even though what they really want to know is what to do with the activity, they'll be so fixated on the pencil, they won't get the instructions. So pass out the supplies, although you got to streamline your supply passing out. Try to make it efficient so kids aren't waiting. It's a fine line to walk. Always make sure that you are role modeling proper safety. Wear your safety gear. Make the kids wear the safety gear. Don't forget and do a fire demo with your goggles up on top of your head. And you know what? I actually love to enlist the campers as safety narcs. So you tell them, hey, we always need to be wearing our safety gear when we're wearing it. And if you catch us, the instructors, not wearing our safety gear, we have to do X. We have to do a monkey dance for you, or everybody gets candy or something like that. Bring them in so it's not just you constantly policing them, and that actually then makes it kind of fun. Although some of them will take it too far and just really be annoying. But it's worth it to keep them safe. Make sure to explain what you're doing while you're doing it. Although sometimes when you're doing something complicated, it's hard to talk and do it. So let them know, hey, I'm going to do this complex thing, so I'm going to be quiet for the next few seconds. But, it's okay, I'm doing it. It's great to have a partner who can talk while one person is actually doing the hands-on activity. That's the way I like to do it. I'm the talker, they do the activity, although, I love setting things on fire. They don't let me, the minions don't let me set things on fire when I'm talking anymore, because I spilled grain alcohol all over the table and stripped the varnish off of it. Stop the activity at any time if you feel it becomes unsafe. Don't hesitate. I mean, it may be disappointing to people, but it would be really disappointing to hurt someone. We don't ever want to have anyone hurt. So far at camp, we've never had anyone seriously injured. All but one injury that we've ever had at camp. I mean, every injury has been minor. And only one injury has actually been related to a science activity, and that was actually somebody picked up a pinball table in a tight space and then hit another girl on the head with it. So it wasn't even science so much as don't pick up heavy things and move them in tight spaces. Please, we do not want this to be the year when somebody gets burned or stabbed or something. That would be bad. So the camp director will take care of a bunch of things, sending in travel plans. Our supply coordinator will prepare the supplies, although you guys, camp leaders, you're responsible for sending us the lists of what you want and working with us to get that together. We'll take care of arranging the facilities and provide consultation and comment on activities as we go through. So this is the portion of the safety training where we usually actually play with liquid nitrogen and do some chemical reactions and set some things on fire. We're not going to do that. Because this is a video. That being said, if you're going to work directly with any of these things, you'll need to come in and get some practice with it beforehand. And Morgan and I are on deck to help, train you in liquid nitrogen safety if you haven't used it before. How to use our fire extinguishers, which are really simple. You just pull the red pin out and squeeze the thing and make sure to point it at the fire. One thing that people often don't know about fire extinguishers, though, is that they don't work very long. You don't get multiple uses out of most fire extinguishers we have around here. So one good squirt and it's done. So please be careful when you're pointing it at the fire if you have a fire. And don't just discharge them for fun like one camp did a couple of years ago. They ran through 3 of our fire extinguishers because they thought it was cool. And I was like, great, that's just like $60, $70 you wasted. So don't do that. So if you're going to be doing any of the more dangerous things, make sure to come in with your team leaders or with me and Morgan and practice it ahead of time. And that is safety training for Spice Camp 2016. We'll get more specific as you're working with your leaders or with me in planning out safety. Morgan and Matt are good resources for dealing with anything with chemicals, and Morgan and I are good resources in general for facilities, fire, cryogenic substances, and things like that. So please, if you have any safety concerns, seek us out. We do really feel that safety is important. I prefer to do this training in person, but this will get you sort of the foundation, and we'll dive in deeper as we need to on the more complex activities. All right, thanks a lot. Don't forget to do the volunteer training if you haven't done it yet, and take your quiz online and turn in your background check forms.